Okay, now I'm going to look at the trees on the left-hand side. I've got some raw sienna and burnt sienna, very thin wash, and we'll put a bit of shape in for these trees with just the side of this number 10 brush. Down into here. In one or two places, as well as I come down here, I can also do a bit of softening. There's a touch more of it over at this side here. And I think there's a hint, just a hint of a purpley grey in those trees as well. A little bit of cobalt blue and rose madder, very pale. And we'll just put a touch of that into it as well. Okay, so I need to leave those to dry. So I'm now going to get some more of that soft grey colour, cobalt blue, rose madder and burnt sienna, and start to put in some of these distant trees on the top of the left-hand hill. So let's start over here. Some of these go right out of the top of the scene, treating them fairly loosely and simply, just taking them up into the shapes I created earlier. We'll have a bit of variety by using a slightly darker mixture of the same colour to bring out some of them just a touch stronger. A slightly paler version to make some of them look further away. And just working these, and as they get paler, they really do look as though they're way in the distance. The further away they are, the thinner they are, so you've got to work with that liner writer brush, getting your lines really delicate. Bit of shadow going from the bottoms of them. Now once those trees are dry, we can take the masking fluid off. Well, I've taken the masking fluid off now, apart from that bit in the bottom right where I put it onto a wet background, and we'll come to that later. I'm now going to paint this stone pike that's sticking out of the pool. I need to mix some colour first of all, so I've got a number 8 brush. I'm adding raw sienna and burnt sienna together. I want a little bit of Naples yellow as well, with a hint of rose madder in it. And then I need some dark colour for the dark side of the stone, because there's a definite shadow on one side of it, and that's burnt sienna and ultramarine. And there's also quite a lot of growth on it, bits of weeds and ivy and lichen, moss, all sorts of things. So I'm going to mix a dark green, again with viridian, ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And I'm starting with the light colour. This is the Naples yellow with a hint of rose madder in it. Bringing that all the way up the left-hand side. And then adding a touch of raw sienna and burnt sienna to it. And then as the colour darkens towards the shadow side, I'm introducing the rich dark brown made from burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. Trying to keep a bit of texture in it as well. I'm going to darken the dark a bit more. Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. Get some quite dark areas in. If I get a little bit of dry brushwork as well, that'll help to suggest the rugged nature of the stone. And then there's a little bit of moss, lichen, stuff like that on it. So a hint of green, aureolin and cobalt blue. Before I go to the really dark green for all this vegetation clinging to the dark side of it there. I want a hard edge at the right hand side of the stone and a softer edge in the middle. It's quite a broken edge as well, because there's a lot of leaves and things that really giving us a bit of texture. So the very point of the brush helps to break that up and give me that effect. Bringing it right down into the water now. Trying to describe the shape of this pike in the water. Okay, the next thing I need to do is put a little bit of texture on this lit side of the stone, but I can't do that until it's dried. So to put a bit of texture into the stone, I've got a number 4 brush, some more of that purpley colour, and I'm going to try and use the brush on its side and just grab the raised surface of this rough paper, putting a few fissures, cracks and areas of texture into the stone. Soften it a little bit in one or two places as well, so that it's not too even. And with some darker brown, that's burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, I can pick out a few little cracks and crevices using the very point of the brush and the side of it, again working with that texture on the paper. Now the same sort of thing applies to the hill in the background here. We'll get a bit more of that browny colour, and again working with the side of the brush and ensuring that I follow the slope to emphasise the shape of the land, building in a few crevices, fissures, cracks, bits of detail really, making it look a bit more natural. It shouldn't look too organised or neat and tidy. Maybe a little bit of that dark browny green. That's the Viridian, ultramarine and burnt sienna, and a bit of that round the bottom where we get towards the water's edge as well. Touch more of the grey colour and probably a little bit of softening in parts so it's not too obvious that I've used a dry brush. And the same applies, but to a lesser extent, at this bank at the right hand side. Again, getting that bit of dry brushwork in to create a bit of texture on it. Okay, now as that was dry brushwork, it hasn't left me with any really large wet areas, so I can go straight on now to the path. And I'm picking up some of the Naples yellow and rose madder and get a nice bit of light on the path here. A nice contrast to the dark greens and browns behind it. Bringing that right down to the foreground. And then with a touch of lemon yellow, we'll start to get this right-hand bank in place. Bringing it out, a little peninsula into the water there and there. Then a richer green, some Oriolin with a touch of cobalt blue and a little bit of raw sienna, giving us a richer, more olive green as we get down to the water's edge. Doesn't matter that the path's still wet because it's nice if that colour actually softens into the path. A little bit of dark at the water's edge where the water washes away the grass and you get that sort of dark peat colour with a hint of green in it. And this is the Viridian, ultramarine and plenty of burnt sienna. Same over there, just to really bring it down to the water's edge. Tidy it up a little bit along there before we just put the water in. Okay, and we'll leave that to dry.